The exact order to build wealth from $0. So picture this. You're sitting at your kitchen table, maybe it's a Sunday evening, and you've got your bank app open on your phone. You're staring at your balance, and it's not catastrophic. You're not in some kind of financial emergency, but it's also not anything. It's just sort of there. A number that doesn't really grow no matter what you do. And you're thinking, okay, I work hard. I'm not out here blowing money on ridiculous stuff. I don't have some crazy lifestyle. So why does it feel like I'm standing completely still? You close the app, you open it again. Same number. You put the phone face down and go make yourself a cup of tea or coffee or whatever your thing is. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you're asking this question you've been asking for a while now. Where do I even start? That question is exactly what I want to talk about today, because I think so many people are in that exact spot. Not broke, not wealthy, just sort of stuck in this financial no man's land where you know you should be doing something, but nobody ever sat you down and explained the actual order of operations. And the order, it turns out, matters enormously. My name is Adam, and honestly, I spend probably way too much of my time thinking about money. Not just the number side of it, but the psychology, the habits, the weird emotional relationship most of us have with our bank accounts, and why some people seem to build wealth almost quietly and steadily, while others spin their wheels for years without getting anywhere. I find this stuff genuinely fascinating, and I want to walk you through what I think is the right sequence, step by step, to go from zero to actually building something real. And here's what I think might shift things for you today. It's not about finding some secret investment. It's not about a side hustle that changes everything overnight. It's about doing the right things in the right order. Because doing step 5 before step 2 is one of the most common reasons people feel like wealth building isn't working for them. Let's get into it. Okay, so this is the step everyone wants to skip, and I get it, honestly. Looking at your full financial picture, income, debt, spending, all of it, can feel a little bit like finally stepping on the scale after a few months of avoiding it. You already kind of know it's not going to be amazing news. But here's the thing. You cannot build a map to where you want to go if you don't know where you're starting from. I remember talking to my friend Lewis about this a while back. Lewis is one of those guys who's genuinely smart. Good job, earns decent money, but he had this habit of just not looking at his finances directly. He'd pay the bills, check that his rent went out, and then essentially close his eyes to the rest. And when he actually sat down one afternoon and wrote everything out, income, every subscription, every debt, every recurring cost, he found almost $300 a month going to things he'd completely forgotten about. Subscriptions he hadn't used in over a year, an insurance policy he doubled up on. Just noise, quietly draining money every single month. That honest audit is where everything starts. Not because it's fun, it's not particularly fun, but because it gives you something to work with. You want to know 3 things: what's coming in, what's going out, and what you owe. That's it. Get those 3 numbers out of the dark and into the light. You don't need a fancy spreadsheet. Notes app works fine. Back of an envelope if that's what you've got. The reason this matters so much as the first step is that everything else you do with money is basically downstream of this clarity. You can't plug a leak you don't know exists. Build your full emergency fund. Okay, so you've handled the high interest debt. Now we come back to the emergency fund and build it out properly. This time we're talking about 3 to 6 months of essential living expenses: rent or mortgage, utilities, food, transport, insurance, the stuff you genuinely cannot skip. That number is different for everyone. For some people, it's $8,000. For others, it might be 15. What matters is that it's enough that if you lost your job tomorrow or something major broke, you would have time to breathe and make good decisions rather than panicking. I know 3 to 6 months sounds like a lot, especially starting from zero, but this is not a sprint. It's a slow, methodical build, and you don't have to get there in a month. Every little bit you add to that account is reducing your financial vulnerability in a real and meaningful way. Where should it live? A high-yield savings account if you have access to one. You want it to be earning something, Even modest interest helps, but you also want it to be accessible within a day or two if you need it, not invested in the market where a crash could cut it in half right when you need it most. Just available, stable, and quietly accumulating a little interest on the side. Here's the honest truth about why people skip this step. It feels passive. It doesn't feel exciting like investing does. There's no dashboard to check, no percentage gains, no stories to tell at dinner. But the people I know who have this fund built up carry themselves differently around money. There's a quietness to how they make decisions. They don't take jobs out of desperation. They don't stay in bad situations because they can't afford to leave. Financial security isn't just about getting rich. It's about having options. And this fund is what buys you options. Start investing and understand what you're actually doing. Now we get to investing. And I think the reason so many people either never start investing or start at the wrong time is that there's this enormous amount of noise around it. People on social media talking about options, crypto, individual stocks, day trading. It can feel like if you're not doing something complex and active and risky, you're missing out. You're not. Let me offer you something much simpler and, statistically speaking, much more effective for the vast majority of people. Index fund investing, specifically broad market index funds, things that track the S&P 500 or the total stock market. These funds buy tiny pieces of hundreds or thousands of companies at once, which means you're not betting on any single company succeeding. You're betting on the overall economy growing over time. And historically, over long periods, it has, consistently. The magic ingredient here is time and consistency, not brilliance. If you invest a relatively modest amount regularly over 20 or 30 years and don't touch it, the compounding returns do something that feels almost unreasonable. Money that was invested 15 years ago isn't just bigger. In many cases, it's multiple times bigger, and that multiplication continues the longer it stays invested. A few practical things worth understanding here. First, take advantage of any tax-advantaged accounts available to you, 401k, IRA, ISA, depending on where you are, before investing in a regular brokerage account. If your employer matches contributions to your 401k, contribute enough to get the full match. That match is essentially an immediate 100% return on that portion of your money. There is almost nothing in finance that beats a free match. Second, automate it. Set up a recurring transfer from your checking account to your investment account on payday before you have the chance to spend it. Pay yourself first, as the saying goes. This works because it removes the decision from the equation. You don't have to motivate yourself every month to invest. It just happens, quietly in the background. Third, don't watch it too closely. Seriously, the market goes up and down constantly. If you check your portfolio every day, you will experience a lot of unnecessary stress, and you will be tempted to do something every time it dips. The people who do best with long-term investing are often the ones who are almost boringly disciplined. They invest consistently, they don't panic during downturns, and they don't make dramatic changes based on short-term noise. Grow your income, because frugality has a ceiling. I want to pause here and say something that I think sometimes gets lost in personal finance conversations. There is a ceiling on how much you can cut. You can optimize your spending, you can cancel subscriptions, you can make your own lunches, and all of that is genuinely worthwhile. But at some point, you've cut everything cuttable and you're still working with a limited number. The only number with no ceiling is your income. This doesn't mean you need to start some massive business empire. It means being intentional about whether your income is growing over time. Are you developing skills that make you more valuable in your field? Are you having conversations about progression and compensation at work? Are you aware of what your skills are worth in the market? Because a lot of people just stay in the same salary bracket for years, not because they couldn't earn more, but because they never actively pursued it. Even modest income increases have an outsized effect on your wealth building when you channel that extra money directly into your financial goals rather than simply expanding your lifestyle. This is sometimes called lifestyle inflation, and it's one of the quietest wealth destroyers out there. You get a raise, your expenses mysteriously rise to match your new income. Net result, exactly the same amount of money left over at the end of the month. The raise effectively disappears. The move is this. When your income increases, direct a significant portion of that increase, ideally at least half, toward your financial goals before your lifestyle has a chance to absorb it. It's much easier to never start spending that extra money than to try and claw it back later. Protect what you're building. Okay, here's a section that people almost always skip because it's not exciting and it doesn't feel like building. But I would genuinely argue that protecting the wealth you're creating is just as important as creating it, maybe more so at certain stages. What does protecting it look like? A few things. Life and disability insurance if you have people depending on your income. This is not optional if you have a family. A will, even a basic one, especially if you have assets or dependents. Making sure your emergency fund is maintained and not raided for non-emergencies. And honestly, being thoughtful about who and what you expose your finances to. There's this tendency when you're starting to build momentum with money to get overconfident. You start reading about investments, you feel like you're getting it, and then someone, sometimes a friend, sometimes a family member, sometimes just an ad on Instagram, presents you with an opportunity, something that sounds like it has high returns and low risk. And a part of your brain wants to believe it because you're excited about money now and you want to accelerate. Be careful here. Not cynical, you don't want to miss genuine opportunities because of excessive fear, but careful. The fundamentals work. They're slow and unflashy, but they work. Every person I've seen take a significant financial step backward did so because they got impatient with the speed of normal wealth building and reached for something that promised to shortcut it. Build multiple streams, but only when you're ready. You've heard multiple income streams so many times it probably sounds like a cliche at this point, but there's real wisdom in the idea. The issue is just that most people try to do it too early, before the foundational stuff is in place. Trying to build a side business when you're still carrying high-interest debt and have no emergency fund is just spreading thin, not building resilience. Once you've got the foundation solid, debt under control, emergency fund in place, investing happening consistently, then yes, exploring additional income streams makes real sense. This could be a small side business doing something you're already good at. It could be investing in rental property if that's accessible and makes sense for your situation. It could be building something digital, a product, a course, a community that can generate income somewhat independently of your time. The goal isn't to be doing 6 things simultaneously. The goal is that over time, you're not entirely dependent on one source of income. That vulnerability, the all eggs in one basket reality of being dependent on a single employer for 100% of your financial well-being, is something that most wealthy people actively move away from as they grow. Not overnight, not by chasing every shiny opportunity, but methodically and deliberately. Think in decades, not months. I want to talk about time for a minute because I think this might be the most underrated factor in all of wealth building. There is a huge difference between someone who starts investing at 22 versus someone who starts at 32. Not because 32 is too late, it's absolutely not, but because of how compounding worked over long periods, that extra decade is genuinely enormous. The challenge is that we're not wired to think in decades. We're wired to think about this month, this year at most. Social media makes it worse because you're constantly seeing people your age who seem to be financially ahead, which creates this pressure to accelerate, to catch up, to do something dramatic. And that pressure is almost always counterproductive. It leads to impatience, and impatience in wealth building tends to lead to bad decisions. The people who build real, lasting wealth are almost always playing a longer game than everyone else. They're making decisions based not on what will look impressive next year, but on what will compound meaningfully over the next 15 or 20 years. They're boring in the best possible way. They invest regularly even when the market is down. They don't restructure their entire strategy every time something new becomes trendy. They stay the course. There's a certain peace that comes with genuinely internalizing this long view. The day-to-day noise of financial media, market fluctuations, the latest investment trend. It all matters much less when you've truly committed to a decades-long approach. You stop checking your portfolio obsessively, you stop worrying about whether this month's contribution landed at a good time. You just keep going, month after month, year after year, and you let time do its work. Revisit, adjust, and don't overcomplicate it. The last thing I want to say before we wrap this up is about simplicity. There is an enormous industry built around making personal finance feel complicated. Apps and advisors and strategies and models and frameworks. And some of that complexity is genuinely useful for specific situations. But for the vast majority of people, the wealth building formula is actually not that complicated. It's just hard in the sense that it requires consistency over a long time. And consistency over a long time is emotionally difficult, even when the actions themselves are simple. Revisit your financial picture a couple of times a year. Not obsessively, just regularly. Is your emergency fund still intact? Is your debt situation moving in the right direction? Is your investment contribution still appropriate given your income? Has anything changed that needs adjusting? This review doesn't need to take more than an hour. It just needs to happen. And resist the urge to add complexity for its own sake. Some people, once they get good at the basics, start adding layers, new accounts, new strategies, new instruments, because they feel like the simplicity can't be right, that surely they must be missing something. They're usually not. The basics, done consistently over time, genuinely produce remarkable outcomes. That's not a platitude, it's just math. So let's bring this all together. We started with that Sunday evening feeling, the account that doesn't grow, the vague sense that you should be doing something but not knowing where to start. And what I hope you've seen today is that the where to start question actually has a real answer. It's not vague, it's a sequence. You get honest about where you are. You build a small starter buffer. You tackle high-interest debt. You build your full emergency fund. You start investing in a consistent, boring index fund kind of way. You grow your income and protect yourself from lifestyle inflation swallowing it. You protect what you're building. You eventually add income streams. You think in decades, and you keep it simple. None of those steps are particularly glamorous. There's no step that involves finding a secret. There's no shortcut hiding in here that I conveniently buried in the middle of the video. The honest truth is that building wealth from zero is mostly about sequencing, consistency, and patience, and those three things are available to almost anyone regardless of where they're starting. What makes this genuinely hard isn't the knowledge. You now have the knowledge. What makes it hard is doing it when nothing feels exciting, when the balance is moving slowly, when someone else seems to be getting rich faster with some aggressive play that you're choosing not to make. Staying the course when the course is boring, that's the real skill. And it's a skill anyone can develop. I think about the version of you 5 years from now, 10 years from now. If that person could sit across from you today and tell you one thing, I genuinely believe it would be this. Start. Start with whatever you have. Start imperfectly. Start now. Because the biggest variable in all of this isn't how smart you are, or how much you earn, or whether you find some great investment. It's simply how much time you give it. You've got more time than you think. Go use it well.